Hey guys, and welcome back. So in the previous nugget, we discussed how we could manually mount our file systems, but we did notice that we did not have any type of persistence. A simple reboot would simply just unmount the file systems we mounted with the mount command. Now you might have noticed that despite the reboot, some of the file systems did persist. Say for example, we do an lsblk-f, we can see this one here is still mounted, as well as this one right here. So what is going on? Why are these ones mounting and the other ones are not? What it comes down to is a very important file, and you really want to be remembering this file. It is the etc, in fact let me just type cat, the etc fs tab file. Really remember this file. So if I open this up, in fact let me go in via nano instead so we can get the color highlighting. Okay, right, so let me tell you what's going to happen. When the system boots up, the mount command is going to be issued, but it's going to be issued with a very particular flag. It's going to be issued with the -a flag. So mount -a. Now what this is going to do, it's going to mount all of the file systems that have been defined to mount within this particular file right here. So what we can actually see here are a bunch of different columns. Now I will admit the way the columns have been formatted is really quite ugly. It is quite difficult to actually follow which column is which, but let me walk you through it quite briefly. Now the very first column is going to be the file system UUID. Okay, so this is the UUID for my SDA5. The reason why I know that is because I can see the very next column, which is the mount point. And by the way, if you want to be able to correlate what I'm looking at, first column is file system, next column is mount points. So I happen to know the mount point here is root, which correlates to my SDA5. The next column is the type, and like I say, the formatting here not so good. The type is going to be this one here, ext4, that is the file system type. And then we see the mount options. We briefly mentioned what this was all about, so we can see here what's going to happen is on error we will attempt to remount using read only. Now we do have these other options here, dump and pass. I'm not really going to dive into the details of what those are right now. And below we can see the file system here identified with the UUID. Again, this is mounted at boot EFI. That's going to be my SDA1 partition. We can see the file system is VFAT. We can see the mount options, and we can see for dump it's got the value 0 and pass it's got the value 1. Okay, so check this out. What this means then is that if I want to mount my file system in such a way that it will be auto mounted upon a boot up, then I don't just want to use the mount command, I actually want to put that information within etc fs tab. That means when the system boots up and runs that mount-a command, if my information is within this file, then it will be mounted. Now the first thing to notice here is that this is unwritable. That is because I didn't use my super user privileges, so I'll just exit back out here for the now, and I'll say sudo nano etc fs tab, type in my password, okie doke. So what I will do here is I can specify the UUID, or I can just give the device type. So that means I can just specify, if I so choose, dev sdb1, which is my device type, and then I can specify the mount point. So my mount point here is going to be home IPv0 and the backups directory, and then the file type I'll say is ext4. With respect to the mount options, I'll just specify the defaults, and then I'll give the value 0 and 0 for my dump and my pass. If I happen to write this, save view, and I exit out, I do my lsblk-f, notice right now that the system, or rather the file system should I say, is still not booted. That is because we need to run the mount-a command, or we could alternatively reboot the system, which will automatically invoke that command being run. So I'll say sudo mount-a. If I rerun my command, notice now we have actually mounted SDB1, and we've mounted it within home IPv0 backups. And again, if I reboot my system, in fact do my sudo command, sudo reboot, what's going to happen is my system will reboot, and it's rebooting as we can see. Okie doke, so my system has booted back up. I do an lsblk-f, and notice the SDB1 device that is still mounted now. The mounting is now persistent. That is because, like I say, the information has been updated and included within the etc.fs tab file. So very, very important to understand that difference. Now, one thing I do want to mention before we end this nugget is that we can also use systemd with respect to mounting and unmounting our file systems. So like I say, we have our lsblk-f command. We can see we have this device mounted. If I wanted to use systemctl to check this, what I could do is I could say sudo systemctl, and I can specify the status, and then I could go into home, IPv0, and backups, basically just checking the mount point. I'll have to type in my super user passwords, and notice it says that this is active and mounted. We can also see what it is, i.e. the device, and if we wanted to unmount that, what we could do is we could change the option from status to stop. And if I try status once again, notice it is no longer mounted, it is inactive and dead. That means if you run lsblk, we can see it is no longer mounted. But check this out, if I just say start and give it the same mount point and hit enter, notice it has mounted. But check this out, how did it know which device to actually mount? I just gave it a mount point. How did it know to actually mount SDB1? Well, what happens is that if we go into CD and run and then systemd, and we want to be remembering this location here, by the way, and then into generator, within here we actually have a whole bunch of files. See these .mount files? These are the unit files which contain such information. So if I try to mount into home IPv0 backups, systemd is going to look for this mount file if it has already been created, which it has. So if I go into here and I open it, notice the information is right here. It says whereabouts we should mount it, what we should mount, i.e. the device, and the file type. You see that? Similarly, if we look at the other mount points, we can see we have our boot EFI.mount. So I can say sudo, so I can say nano boot EFI.mount. We can see here that is going to be type VFAT, and in this case here, it's just been identified by the UUID as opposed to SDA1. So really what we want to be remembering within this nugget right here is that if we want to have persistence, we really want to be remembering the name of that file, etc.fs tab, as well as knowing that we can use systemctl to mount particular file systems, as well as check their status and unmount them. And like I say, the way systemd can do this is by tracking this information within the run systemd generator directory and look for those .mount files. Okay dokes, I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.